this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
The Middle is supported by Journalism Funding Partners, a nonprofit organization striving to increase the sustainability of local journalism by building connections between donors and news organizations. More information on how you can support The Middle at listentothemiddle.com. Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, joined as always by our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, It is truly an historic moment.
Yeah, man. Former President Trump was found guilty on 34 counts, which I think is just high enough number of counts for us to change our show topic. You know,
that's right. We were going to
switch it all around.
We did, and we were going to do an episode this week about the war in Israel and Gaza, and we're hoping to get to that episode next week. But right now, we want to hear from you about the Trump verdict. A New York jury found former President Trump guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records in connection with the 2016 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. If you haven't been following the case closely, the crux of it was money paid by Trump through his former fixer Michael Cohen to Daniels to cover up a sex scandal right before the 2016 election. The illegal part was that the money was marked as ordinary legal fees, which was ironically illegal. And by the way, Trump is going to be sentenced just before the start of the Republican National Convention, where he is poised to be the party's nominee for president. And of course, Tolliver, the election is just 5 months away. So our question this hour, what does this mean to you? Will it affect your vote this November? And I especially want to hear from you if you're an independent or undecided. Tolliver, what is the number for people to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or write to us at listentothemiddle.com.
And let's meet our panel. MSNBC chief correspondent Ali Velshi, who's host of Velshi, is also the author of the new book, Small Acts of Courage, A Legacy of Endurance and the Fight for Democracy. Ali, great to have you on The Middle.
Great to be back with you, Jeremy.
And USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey is with us as well from Louisville, Kentucky. Phillip, great to have you back on the show as well.
Jeremy, as always, thank you very much.
And before we get to the phones, Ali, you've been covering this trial, but also the election. Does something like this, do you think, have the potential to shift the political landscape?
It does. In fact, there are a lot of ways to look at this, but there's been a lot of polling done that has asked people, number one, will they change their behavior if Donald Trump is convicted of anything? Now, certainly the response has been from those who would support Donald Trump that if he were convicted of one of the crimes directly related to the attempt to overturn the election, they'd be most likely to turn away from him. And if he is incarcerated, they'd be most likely to turn away from him. The one issue about this particular trial is that it's neither the trial that mattered most to Trump supporters, nor is it the one that is likely to result in his incarceration. It's not impossible. It could. Incarceration is well within the range of things that Judge Juan Merchan can impose, but it was to the opponents of Trump, to the people who wanted you to turn away from Trump if he was convicted of anything, this was the least of those cases. But the numbers indicate that it's anywhere from 2% on the low end to 15 or 16% of Trump supporters on the high end who might turn away from him.
Which, as we know from the last several elections and also the polls, that could make the difference in an election that will be very close. Phillip Bailey, what about you? You've been out on the campaign trail. What do you think? Do you think this has the ability to shift the political landscape?
I am most interested in hearing from white suburban Republicans in these 5 to 7 swing states over the next week and a half to 3 weeks. Does this shift them away, especially my law and order Republicans who really lean into these issues historically, right? And as Ali said, look, Trump faces up to 4 years in prison, but legal experts have already told us at USA Today the presumptive Republican nominee is likely to only get probation or a shorter sentence. But I do think politically, I'm also interested to see if this will galvanize Democrats. Everyone's been talking about, this is something that could galvanize Republicans, and we're seeing in the immediate aftermath, Jeremy, when Red, the platform that raises money for Republicans, go through the roof. I think it actually was overwhelmed and shut down for a little bit there. So we're going to see some heavy fundraising out of Trump. But I do wonder for my more, not moderate, but my more law and order Republicans in those swing districts, in those suburban areas in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, et cetera, will this shift them? Those who have been continuing to vote for former Ambassador Nikki Haley, even though she's no longer in the race, they continue to vote for her at pretty high margins. I'm very interested to see how they're going to react to this. And even though people say one thing in a poll, Jeremy, we still vote privately. And what they're going to do in that voting booth may be very different than what they tell pollsters.
And just to be clear, by the way, Phillip, even if Trump does have to serve time and is in jail, he can still run for president.
And this is something that I run across folks across the country on the campaign trail that they're both sort of like scratching their head about. Like, wait, he can still run? Yes, you could be convicted of a felony and still run for president of the United States. And I think that's because, look, now that Donald Trump, we've abused the word unprecedented over the past 18 months with this former president. But at the same time, when people think of someone being a convicted felon, they think of the person who maybe stuck up the 7-Eleven or carjacked them or in their local news coverage. Yes, you can still run for president. Most people just don't do that. I think he can still even vote in the state of Florida, even though he wasn't convicted.
It's possible. It's possible.
Maybe,
It sounds like, if you have a felony conviction in one state that Florida recognizes, and he wouldn't be able to vote in the state of Florida. But let's get to the phones. Because you talk about the independent-minded voters, the voters in the swing states. Let's go to Wisconsin, Brookfield, Wisconsin, to be exact. And Evan joins us. Evan, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey guys. Yeah. So with me, with the deciding of even with when he runs with running, it's not so much of running. It's now, for me, it's more of now that he just got all those, convicted guilty and he got all those charges. What I'm wondering is, as America, what does that, for an image of America, what does that make us look like if we're allowing someone that did something this egregious to become president? What are we now allowing for more stuff to happen for maybe, say, future presidents? Are we going to allow a future president to get away with murder and still be a felon? Because murder is still a felony. So,
do you think that among you and the people in your state of Wisconsin, which is sure to be a very close state this year, do you think that any minds are changed among people that you know?
I think definitely we're all scratching our heads of now it's like, well, okay, before, we were standing by you, supporting, and now it's like, well, now you're guilty. And so I think it's more of, I think we're all just confused.
Evan, did you vote for Trump?
Yeah, I did. And for me, I felt, yes, and with this conviction too, I feel like a lot of mistrust. Like my trust in him is just completely gone. Like I don't even want to vote because I don't want Biden, but I also don't want Trump.
Evan, thank you for that call. Ali Velshi, very interesting that the very first call is somebody who voted for Trump, doesn't want Biden, but now doesn't want Trump and may not vote at all.
Well, I'm grateful that Evans is thoughtful about this as he is. Number one, I write a lot about this in my book. One has to vote. That's the sort of price of admission of citizenship. And he's right. It's confusing. This is confusing to people. I think one has to understand what this process was. There are a lot of people who didn't think this case was particularly important or wasn't as important as the other cases, which actually charged Donald Trump with, in being involved in attempting to overturn an election. There was at the base of this election interference. Although he was charged with falsifying business records, I think it's important to remember the process did work. This was a jury of Donald Trump's peers, and we could be sitting here right now having had that jury come back and find him not guilty of 34 counts or any of those counts. These are people who saw the evidence, and the evidence in business trials is complicated. It's always hard to sort of follow because most people are not accountants and can't follow these things. This is what happened, and Donald Trump's main argument against it is that the system is rigged. It's rigged. Joe Biden's involved. George Soros is involved. All sorts of people are involved. All that was involved was a district attorney who does actually prosecute these kind of crimes. Other people have been charged with them, and a jury that found Donald Trump guilty of this. Now, you can decide whether that's too much or too little or the wrong verdict or whatever it is, but it has happened now. Donald Trump is a convicted felon who has said he will file for appeal. He's got 30 days in which to file the motion and then several months in which to actually file the appeal. The appeal court may say that because there's an appeal underway, whatever sentence he gets on July 11th can be held, and he doesn't have to begin serving it. And there may not be any jail involved. There may be a monetary fine, but it's real. It's really real. So to the initial question about what does the rest of the world think about us, I will say this. The rest of the world should think that we have now joined the club of nations who have taken seriously offenses by current or former leaders. Other countries have done this, and generally speaking, the research has indicated that when a country sticks to its rules, it strengthens its democracy. So I think we should think that we did the right thing, not the wrong thing. I'm not talking about the conviction of Donald Trump. I'm talking about the actual trial of Donald Trump and how it was carried out in the way a normal trial should be carried out.
Interesting. Tolliver, I know a lot is coming in on TikTok, and I thank you for looking at TikTok so that I don't have to. So tell us what are people saying?
There's so much. One commenter says, how am I going to vote for someone who can't even vote for themselves? Felons can't vote, bruh. Another person says, actually, I'm more apt to vote for him now. We all knew about Stormy before the 2016 election. It had no effect on the outcome. I'll save the rest for later.
Okay, well, you can reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media. Of course, our phone number is 844-4MIDDLE. That is 844-464-3353. We want to know what you think about the verdict of President Trump guilty on 34 counts in New York State for falsifying business records, and whether it is going to have an impact on your vote. We're going to get to a lot more calls as we go forward. But Tolliver, right after the news today, President Trump went straight to the cameras at the courthouse.
Naturally. Here he was moments after the verdict.
It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
And Tolliver, we are going to have shows leading up until November 5th about all the big issues, and we want to hear from you at listentothemiddle.com or call us. We're going to hear from more of your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're getting your reaction to the Trump verdict in New York, guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records in connection to a hush money payment ahead of the 2016 election. Tolliver, what is the number for people to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on TikTok. Get it.
Or on TikTok. I'm
Just
joined
that
by
one.
Just that one. Okay. I'm joined by MSNBC chief correspondent and host Ali Velshi and USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey, and lots of phone calls coming in. Let's get right back to them. Leisha is joining us from Columbia, South Carolina. Hi, Leisha. Go ahead.
Hi. I consider myself an independent at this point. I have been a Republican, and I've also been a Democrat. I would never have considered voting for Donald Trump ever, which I, of course, did not. I voted for Biden, but I'm incredibly disappointed in Biden. He's been a huge disappointment to me. So at this point, this verdict didn't change my mind at all. I don't like Trump. I'm happy for the verdict. However, I live in South Carolina, and I can tell you without reservation that this will not change people's decision to vote for Trump in this state. These people love him. And, in fact, this will probably make them go to the polls more.
Interesting.
I
Leisha,
don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. I don't get it, but that's how they think here.
Yeah. Leisha, thank you. Phillip Bailey, your thoughts?
Well, look, I think that one thing that President Trump has proven time and time again is that controversy actually draws more people who already are sort of in his camp to him. Very rarely have you seen him suffer any sort of political consequence from any of these verdicts or controversies. So I don't think that you will see this sort of major dip in his support. Again, what I'm looking for, though, are those more moderate Nikki Haley style voters, those George H.W. style Republicans, those Mitch McConnell Republicans who live in those suburban areas and those swing districts, to see if this is them hedging their bet. Not necessarily them voting for Joe Biden and putting a Biden sticker on their car, but will they become more lukewarm to Donald Trump? Nikki Haley's entire campaign was this man's character. And this, once again, his character has come up, not just in this case, Jeremy, right? Remember the E. Jean Carroll case, right? There was the civil fraud case.
Right.
As well. There was the Trump Corporation case. It's not just this. So when President Trump and his allies say the system is rigged against him, well, every election that he's lost has been rigged against him, and every case he's lost has been rigged against him.
It's interesting you bring up Nikki Haley, because there is not a zero chance that she might be his running mate. And wouldn't that be interesting after this verdict comes out? I mean, who knows? I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but it's been reported that it's possible, and you never know.
He's angling for it.
Yeah. Let's go to Andy, who's in Salt Lake City, Utah. Andy, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Well, I just want to say
I'm listening, and I think everybody's right in that those who were going to vote for him are going to vote for him stronger. I just hope I am independent. I vote for, the right person for the job, and I feel like this is kind of a big nod to his character, kind of what Nikki Haley was saying. But like, I wonder. My dad was a lifelong Republican and would vote no matter what Republican because that's who he was. And I think, what is the Republican Party's response to this going to be? Are they going to just say, yeah, well, he's a felon and he's our only shot, so we're going to put him in? Or are they going to take a step back and say, if we want to keep some of these old school Republicans and not the religious Trumpians, what are they going to do there? I just think we're seeing, all politicians are gross, and Trump is the worst of them all. But this just shows the character of the man to lead our country is guilty of business fraud. So is that? I don't think the voters are going to change, but is the Republican Party going to look at that and say, where are we going?
That's a great question, Andy. Let me go to Ali Velshi with that. We already have heard from some Republicans, Ali, just right after the verdict, standing with Trump.
It's incredible. So I would say this, Andy, couple things. One is I recoil when people say politics is gross or politicians are gross, despite the fact that I work in the news business and we are provided with evidence that looks like that on a daily basis. So I understand why you say it, but I cover global news, and I will say this. That's a luxury that you can only have when you have politics, right? When you have a justice system that works, when you have a country in which people have the vote, which we still have in the United States. So I implore you and everybody like you to stay involved in the process. And I think you and Phillip have both brought up interesting points. On one hand, there are 340 roughly million people in this country. There are real Republicans. There are real conservatives who are not Donald Trump, who do not have that degree of moral failing in his character. And we have to figure out ways to lift them up, because a country with one working political party doesn't work. On the other hand, there are 100 million people who could have voted in the last election who didn't vote in the last election. And citizenship, we think about it as a series of rights, but it's also a series of obligations, voting of which is the least of them. Part of it is getting out there and saying, the system feels icky, as you said, Andy. It feels broken. It doesn't feel right. What can we do between now and November to fix that? It is a binary choice, essentially, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but it doesn't have to be. There are a lot of good people running for office around this country, not for president, because for the moment, that is a binary choice. You can't go off and vote for third-party candidates for president because it just messes up the system right now. But there are a lot of good people in politics, and I want us to remember that Donald Trump is, in fact, in my opinion, the standout. He's a remarkable standout, but he's a standout.
Ali, one of the things that this trial has reminded me of is that there is one thing that all Americans of a certain age have to do, and most people don't complain about it, which is jury duty.
That's right. Kudos to that jury. They had a hard job to do. They knew they were going to make history one way or the other, and they looked at the evidence and they did their job. And that is troublesome to Donald Trump, because as you heard that word salad when he came out, he was very it was rigged, and it was this and it was that and the other thing. Sometimes the jurors of this country don't typically work in their self-interest. If you go to serve on a jury, you are trying to just do your job as best you can. And generally speaking, that's what happens.
Let's go to Andrew, who's in South Jersey. Andrew, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hey, folks. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. And so much great.
We lost Andrew. Oh, no. But Andrew, call us back. I want to hear what you have to say. Joe is in Philadelphia.
I was dying to hear what the end of that sentence is.
I know. Me too. He dropped. Joe is in Philadelphia. Hi, Joe. Welcome to The Middle.
Yeah, how you doing, Jeremy, and to your guests? As a 62-year-old black man, I don't like neither one of them, Trump or Biden. But like I said, I don't think it's going to change people's minds if we're going to vote for Trump, who's going to vote for him, and who wasn't. See, my whole thing is I voted for Biden for years. I held my nose and voted for him, but I cannot support either one of them, because both of them, to me, will be Biden already showed it, and Trump would do the same. They will both be complicit with genocide in Gaza. So I can't support either one of them. And as far as I'm concerned, I've been voting all my life. The only decent president, and this includes Barack Obama, the only decent president, in my opinion, that I ever felt in my life, and I've had a chance to shake it, was President Jimmy Carter. Because I don't even like Barack Obama. You know, I'm a black man. I thought he was a warmonger and stuff. So to me, the only decent president we ever had in this country was Jimmy, and that's why I'm voting for Cornel West. He may not win, but it's not about winning. It's about taking my vote off of two corrupt individuals. I feel as though Joe Biden and Trump are both corrupt. That's why I can vote for either one of them.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much. It brings up the issue of a third-party candidate and Phillip Bailey, whether people who like Joe and like others we've heard from are not happy with Biden but don't want Trump and are going to go somewhere else this election.
I think you're going to see, Jeremy, an unprecedented number of people vote for third-party candidates because the two parties have given you two elderly men, both born right around the time the United Nations was formed, and it's a rematch. And I think, these third-party candidates also have an appeal for folks who do not like that binary choice. But I do think at the end of the day, though, more pragmatic voters are going to go in there and say, I talked to Mark Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and he said, look, when it comes to African-American voters in particular, he said, look, this isn't going to be a popularity contest. This isn't going to be American Idol. Right? You can't vote who you like the most, who fits your agenda the most. So this race to the bottom that we're seeing here, where people don't like either one of these candidates, the double haters, as they're called, I think what Democrats are going to do is in the immediate aftermath of this, certainly Trump is going to see a surge with his supporters and fundraising. But I do think you're going to see Democrats put up a contrast and say, look, yeah, they're both old. You might not like either one of them, but one of them's a convicted felon. Right. One of them is this, and the other one of them had supporters attack our institutions and Capitol on January 6th. And one is someone who you may disagree with from time to time, but fits in the norm of what a president usually is. I think that's where the Biden campaign is going to really lean into. The fact that they, for example, Jeremy, in the last days of this trial, at first they were keeping their hands off and sort of taking a step back from it.
And then they're sending Robert De Niro out there.
They brought in Robert De Niro, right? So there's a piece of the campaign, I think, that Biden is beginning to realize he does have to sort of play some of the circus games that Trump has played. And I think that he certainly knows how to goad the former president and get him to slip out there when he doesn't want to.
Well, I have good news, which is that there's an Andrew from South Jersey on the line, and I assume it's the same one. Andrew, try again this time. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the same guy. I appreciate you all having me on board. And great dialogue going on. So much good conversation. And, I did vote for Trump. And I'll tell you that this doesn't really change my mind because, and to hint on what you talked about a little earlier about politicians all being corrupt, and it kind of is the perspective from a lot of the country. And I think that's why people go towards Trump. And I don't think this is going to change a lot of people's minds because others have already done the same or similar. And when you talk about, his approach to the presidency versus his personal life, I think that's a little bit different of a stretch because as a businessman, I guess it's a hope more than like anything that he would do right by the country. And he did from what I saw. And, you talked about the Democrats already having it out for him. That was abundantly clear from before the election. And they really just came at him.
Andrew, this was a jury of his peers. You don't think the jury was being objective and neutral in this case?
To be honest with you, I wasn't part of it. I didn't listen to any of the trial, but I hope they were. I really do. I hope they got people that were impartial to him. But it is what it is as far as that verdict. That was something he did, and, not the greatest thing. And I've had some friends be like, hey, he's the president. He's supposed to be a role model. But it's just kind of weird, take it as it is, but you look at JFK, if he was living this time of day, this time of life, doing what he did, with all the secret rendezvous and whatnot, would he not be considered the same kind of person as Trump?
Yeah. Andrew, thank you very much for that call. Ali Velshi, sounds like genuinely, supports Trump, wants to continue supporting Trump despite the guilty verdict.
Yeah. And I think I'd say Andrew's reasoning is more sound than the reasoning we heard out of Donald Trump's mouth today, right? Donald Trump came out and said this was rigged and this was Joe Biden, and this trial was held in a place where I only won 5 or 6% of the support. Which is a misunderstanding of our legal system, right? Our legal system is a jury of your peers, not a jury of your peers who voted like you, not a jury of your peers who voted for you. It's a jury of people who hear the evidence and are supposed to act in an unbiased, uninterested manner. if you believe what you believe about Donald Trump, if you believe he did this and it should be separated from his abilities as president of the United States, I think that's valid. I can hear that. But that's not actually what Donald Trump is saying about this. He's saying this was a witch hunt. That's the language that they're using. His sons have used we don't use this language much, but he says this is what happens in a banana republic third world country. I think it's important to understand the justice system did what the justice system did. You can look at that and say, that's not enough for me to turn away from Donald Trump, and I'm sure many millions of people will do that. But that is the justice system. And so to the extent that our caller's not exactly on the same page as Donald Trump on this one, that's interesting. Donald Trump thinks that he was unfairly prosecuted. Not that he was prosecuted, but you should still think he's okay to be president.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
He's making the case that the justice system is broken.
Right.
And when he gets into office, he said many times, he will fix all of that stuff. And they've got a whole plan to actually fix that. That's the part that worries me.
And by the way, I feel like if having watched and followed and covered him for so many years, if the jury had come down with a not guilty verdict across the board, he would not be saying that it was rigged. And he would be saying it was a big, beautiful jury with a great verdict. So anyway, let's go to Charles, who's in Los Angeles. Charles, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much for taking my call, and shout out to Allie there. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do live in Los Angeles for about the past over a decade, but was born and raised in Ohio, so I have people near and dear to me who are committed to Donald Trump. And, you know, as the previous caller said, that he thought, well, he did this and he did that. You know, he failed on his three major campaign promises, which was to build the wall, to deport the immigrants, change Affordable Care Act, and I think the reality is that the verdict isn't going to make a difference in any of those people's minds. And as Allie pointed out, there were, over 100 million or close to 100 million voters who didn't vote. I happen to have a law degree. I'm a defender of the Constitution. I study constitutional law. And the real reality here is that Donald Trump, we should believe what he says, Project 2025, the things that have been said. Won't go into all the details, try to keep it concise, but he is a clear and present threat to this democracy, this beautiful country, greatest country in the world, United States of America, and we need to vote. He is unfortunately right that the real verdict will come on November 5th. And so to the issue, I don't think it's going to change a lot of people's minds, but I hope because of how close it was that, you know, perhaps there's enough in those interstitial areas in those swing states, but Biden.
Charles, we've got it. Let me take that to our guest. Let me take that to our guest, Charles. Thank you, Phillip Bailey. You know, a lot is going to happen between now and November 5th. We're talking about Trump saying the real day is going to be November 5th. It's only 5 months away, but it's a lifetime in politics.
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to, and some of your callers have touched on this, what Donald Trump has done is almost the inverse of what Barack Obama did in 2007 and 2008 with this sort of aspirational, hope and change election. Trump really takes advantage of the fact that a lot of people go, I don't like politics, or I think they're all corrupt. And that was his sort of debut into politics, saying, look, all these people do this. They all abuse the system, and this whole system's rigged. And I'm the person who's going to come in here and be the dynamite stick that's going to blow it up for you. Right. And I think that is what he benefits from consistently, is that he can say, look, Biden is just as corrupt. Biden is just as racist. Biden is just as this and that. I think where this may end up shifting things and helping Biden in the long run, I don't think in the short term, but in the long run is I think the Biden people have this larger issue of the threats to democracy and our institutions being attacked. And thus far, those institutions have helped.
Well, and the one thing that is different, though, this time, Tolliver, is that we have never had a president or a former president of the United States who's been convicted of a crime.
Yeah, and, you know, maybe the closest moment in history came when former President Richard Nixon had to resign ahead of potential impeachment and criminal charges.
America needs a full-time president. and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad, to continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home.
Just amazing to listen to that now, Tolliver. And we will be right back with more of The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're asking you this hour, how might the verdict today for Trump influence you in the election? What do you think about it? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. I am joined by USA Today Chief Political Correspondent Phillip Bailey and MSNBC Chief Correspondent and host Ali Velshi. And the phone lines are lit up. Let's go to Marcus in Jonesboro, Georgia. Marcus, welcome to The Middle. What do you think?
Hi. I'm not what you'd think of as a Trump voter, but I'm pretty young. I've spent pretty much my entire political participation in awe of just how icky it can be, right? But I'm not going to come on and get up on my soapbox about how bad everybody is, right? Because you've heard that. What I really wanted to know was, I want to ask one of the correspondents, how do you think this will genuinely affect the Republican Party or even a Republican ticket? Will they take these charges seriously? Because I know the sentencing is going to be before the convention, I believe. I wanted to know.
Great question, Marcus.
Someone else beyond.
Yeah, great question. Ali Velshi, I think a lot of people looking at this who don't spend all their time focused on politics would say, well, why wouldn't they take him off the ticket if this is the situation?
Donald Trump has a fairly complete hold on the Republican Party. So these questions that Marcus has are really valid. What happens to the Republican Party? That's actually my greater concern about this whole thing. Donald Trump is a phenomenon, and he's quite a phenomenon, and he's a phenomenon who could be the president of the United States again. And I think that's something we all have to be thinking about. But more importantly, I'm worried about the health of our political system. We had a gentleman call from Philadelphia to say he's voting for Cornel West. Great idea in concept. I come from Canada where we have multiple political parties, and it actually typically works. We don't have a system for that here in America. And the danger is none of these third-party candidates can win a state, let alone the Electoral College votes needed to become the president. So it all becomes a game of taking a vote away from somebody or it being half a vote for Donald Trump. The Republican Party, until it decides to fix itself and be taken back by conservative Republicans who have an ideology that is different from liberal progressives and have that ideological debate on an ongoing basis, we are not going to fix this problem. I would love to be back in a world where Phillip and I are discussing the minimum wage in this country, or whether we should be having, universal health care or labor rates and labor unionization. I mean, there's so many millions of things to discuss in this country, but we don't discuss them because we become super polarized and you vote for the party and the person who represents that party. That is where the Republican Party is broken here. There was an opportunity for the Republican Party to do what it did during Richard Nixon's time and say, this is an albatross around our neck. This is not helpful for us. Let's get back to who we are. For the moment, Donald Trump controls that Republican Party, so they will not be making any choices as to who his running mate is or whether he's at the top of the ticket. He has made those choices. That break is yet to come. It will only come if Donald Trump loses the next election, and I'm not even sure it'll come then. But for now, the Republican Party is Donald Trump.
Wow. And Jeremy, I think it's important to note, you played Richard Nixon's clip before the latest break, and I believe we're coming on the 50th anniversary of his resignation here. And remember, in that time period, it was Republican senators led by Barry Goldwater of Arizona, of all people, who confronted then President Nixon and said, Mr. President, you're going to be removed from office, right? So the Republican Party put Richard Nixon in check,
correct.
Right? Today you see, Speaker Johnson saying this is a disgrace. You have J.D. Vance, who's a potential VP pick, calling this verdict out. You even have
going to the courthouse, dressing with a red tie, standing in support
of them. You had Mike Lawler, Republican of New York, who represents a district that Joe Biden won in 2010 by 10 points. And he says this is, quote, waging a political war. New York Democrats are waging a political war on their enemies. So part of what's happened and part of what's changed, to answer your caller's question, is that the political parties have become more and more answerable, not to their higher and better angels, but to their donor base, to the nastier versions of themselves, to getting on cable news and raising money. That's where the base and the power center for both political parties often lies. And that's why you haven't seen the Republican Party ever, outside of maybe those first two debates in 2016, ever put a real check on Donald Trump.
Let's get back to the phones. Kevin is in Norfolk, Virginia. Kevin, welcome to the middle. What do you think? Does the verdict change your view?
Well, the verdict doesn't really change my view because I already knew the type of character that Donald Trump had before jury deliberated.
Which is what?
This basically shows, that he's unfit for the presidency. I mean, why would you want a criminal, a crook, in office? It makes no sense. This is the representation of the country, and it makes us look like idiots to the rest of the world.
Kevin, thank you for that. And let me go to John, who's in St. Petersburg, Florida. John, welcome to the middle. What do you think?
Hello. Honestly, personally, it didn't really change my view of President Trump. I mean, I was already pretty set that I was going to vote for Biden. I've just been really disgusted by his actions, really just for over the last 4 years in general. But what's really interesting to me is like the potential implications this could have on the election. Even though they might actually not be as big as I would probably expect them to be, because I read an earlier article from that like a poll found that like roughly 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 people who were prospective Trump voters would actually have their minds changed
right
by a guilty verdict. And I think a part of that is because Trump's entire platform has been largely on this like populist martyrdom persona that he's built for himself. And honestly, I mean, we saw it with the indictments that it didn't really change. People leaned into it. They are selling signs at his rallies with his mugshot on it. Like they're using it as part of his brand. And so I don't know how much it's actually going to change other like Trump loyalists at this point. I think the biggest effect would probably be more like moderate voters who maybe see this as like, this is the tipping point.
Yes.
Like this is, I'm going to vote for Biden instead. It's probably going to be that 1 in 6 or
Right.
1 in 7.
John, thank you for that.
Me,
let me take that to Ali Velshi. Ali, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right. The one thing that we've watched for the last few years is that the base, the solid Donald Trump base, generally speaking, shrunk a little bit and then stayed. And those people in the base are going nowhere. It doesn't matter. They are going to follow him into whatever analogy you want to use, off the pier, into the fire, whatever it is. There are Democrats, to Phillip's point, who are disaffected by Joe Biden for various reasons, and who have said that they'll either vote for a third-party candidate or they will stay home, and they might be decisive in this. But there are moderates. There are people in the middle, the people who used to think that maybe I'm a Democrat, maybe I'm a Republican, maybe I don't identify with one of those parties, maybe I'm going to watch a debate and decide who the best candidate is. There's very little likelihood that those people who truly go into this with an open mind are going to find a better candidate in Donald Trump than they do in Joe Biden. For those people, the Joe Biden deficit is his what seems to be his age. He seems much older than he was when he was last elected. But the performance in a debate might have an impact on them. But for people who are in the middle, who are thinking about it, Donald Trump is giving them more and more reasons on a daily basis not to vote for them. The question is whether Joe Biden is giving those same people reason to vote for them, and that's debatable. There are a lot of people who are very, very unhappy. One of your callers talked about it, about Joe Biden's performance as it relates to Israel and Gaza. On the other hand, he's got performance as it relates to Ukraine and Russia that a lot of people are very impressed with. So the pressure here is on Joe Biden. The pressure here is on Democrats.
By the way, as we said, we are going to talk about Israel and Gaza next week. It was supposed to be today, but obviously the news had us change things up. Tolliver, I know more comments are coming in online. Can you give us a couple?
Yeah, Barb from listentothemiddle.com says, why don't we hold Biden to such high standards and are so critical of what he does and doesn't do, but don't hold Trump to the same standards? Why does Trump get the, well, Trump is unconventional? Why are we not asking him the hard questions? Another commenter says, still voting for Trump. Those charges will be overturned by the Court of Appeals. Andra in South Bend says, why does Trump have such a hold on the Republican Party? I got to tell you, on TikTok, almost all the comments are pro-Trump. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Yeah. Well, let's get to a caller from Raleigh, North Carolina. Mark is on the line with us. Hi, Mark. Go ahead.
Hello. My name's Mark. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. I am unabashedly a change voter. I supported Bernie Sanders in 16 and 20, and really watching the way that the media and the mainstream Democratic Party treated that campaign really disaffected me with the Democratic Party as a whole. And now this verdict really has me supporting Trump, and I'm not your typical Trump voter. I'm Hispanic. I'm a young person, but I've been a part of the Sanders campaign. I was a volunteer, and I was so disaffected by the way that played out, and the way that I felt like the thumbs were on the scales. And it was one thing when it was the media, it's another thing when it's the justice system. And this has me from going to the sidelines to actively supporting Trump.
Interesting. Mark, thank you for that. Philip Bailey, somebody who believes, I guess, as Donald Trump does, that the system is rigged against him.
Yeah, and I think, again, Jeremy, that has always been Donald Trump's bread and butter. For those of you who feel on the political sidelines, who don't typically vote, the reason he was able to take over the Republican Party and his supporters now, Jeremy, run a lot of these state parties at the state level is because he's able to appeal to that. Hey, if you're so upset about how the system hasn't helped you out, hasn't done right by you, vote for me and I'll go up here and I'll wreck the whole joint, right? But then I think what's happened is that now people have seen the image of January 6th. I was in the Capitol recently covering some issues and different things for USA Today. And when you see the prestige and the history of the United States and to realize like these institutions are under attack, but they have largely held. The Arizona House of Representatives did not take Trump's recommendations, right, to undermine those election results there. The Secretary of State in Georgia did not follow Trump's instructions to do that. All the courts said there was no rigging in the 2020 presidential election. Time and time again, even in this case here, these institutions have withheld this storm that Donald Trump has released on many institutions in the United States. But I think always, though, and what Democrats, Republicans, and what third-party candidates always need to pay attention to is Donald Trump tapped into something maybe first, maybe more before anyone else would, but there's a heavy sense of populism out there that the American people want. And Donald Trump simply, rather than taking them to another party, he said, let's just take over this party. But that group of voters, whether they vote for Bernie Sanders or they vote for RFK Jr. or Cornel West, they're out there. And I think Biden should be worried because if those voters wake up and they go, you know what, I don't like Donald Trump's character, but he's at least going to go in that system and shake it up. That's what he has to worry about. Yeah.
Let's get to Carrie, who's in Cincinnati, Ohio. Carrie, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you for having me on. So, wow, listening, I have a lot to unpack here and everything else like that. As far as the earlier comments on the Nixon trials, that was a disservice itself just due to the fact that they didn't convict him because it kind of set the precedent of, okay, well, maybe a president can get away with something. But other than that, you know, I voted for Trump. My opinions on him started to wane when he started taking people out of office and putting them putting his cronies in that had no business being in an office that they had no idea how to run. And it just kind of continued on with that. As far as the verdict goes, I'm pleased with the verdict because it finally shows him that, hey, he is accountable. As far as the legal system that he keeps on saying is broke, the only portion of this legal system that's broke is the legal system that he's appointed judges in judgeship that won't let a trial go forward that the American people need to see. The 34 counts, hey, that's great. But you know what? It's the classified documents case. Do you really want a thief and possibly a terrorist to turn around and be in office again? Do you want a felon who can't own a weapon be in charge of a nuclear arsenal?
Yeah, Carrie, a lot there. You have unpacked a lot, and I just want to make sure that we have a time to respond to it. So, Ali Velshi, Carrie brings up the Supreme Court case even that we're still waiting to hear whether Trump is supposed to be immune from prosecution in some of these cases.
Yeah, look, I think Carrie's thinking about this well. And the saddest part about the situation is that the beauty of our political system is that first of all, we're a plurality, right? We're supposed to exist in a place in which people have different views, and we are supposed to exist with them, not tolerate them, but embrace the idea that we have different views. Generally, as an American citizen today, when thinking about presidential politics, you have lost the privilege of watching a debate, listening to two candidates, comparing their policies and deciding who to vote for. Because right now, everybody's stuck in their lane for various reasons. And Donald Trump has forced that on a lot of Americans. Donald Trump has caused people like our last caller, who sounds like he's conservative and wants a conservative candidate to vote for, to not feel like he's got a good option. And that is part of the problem. Do you want, and he listed all these things that Donald Trump is, to be the person in office. If you didn't like Donald Trump in 2016, the Donald Trump you're going to get in 2024 is now fully emboldened. And one of the reasons one of your earlier callers didn't want to unpack the Project 2025 is that it's the plan that they've got, and it's more than 800 pages long, and it's super specific about what's going to happen the next time Donald Trump is in office.
You know, Allie, you have a new book out that's not 800 pages long, but it is called Small Acts of Courage. and in it, you write, cynicism about politics is actually a luxury of those who have never had to experience life without it. And if those people ever truly lost their ability to participate in the system, they'd never take it for granted again. So as we've heard some calls with some cynicism about our politics, what would you say to those people?
I acknowledge it. I think it's valid. I understand why people are cynical about politics today. I wish there were more shame in the world where people were embarrassed about their bad deeds. But that doesn't matter. The bottom line is we don't have the privilege of disengaging. We don't have the privilege of not voting. We don't have the privilege about being cute and smart about how we're going to do it in this next election. Actual democracy is on the line. And I want a country which is vibrant for conservatives, for liberals, for progressives, for Republicans, for Democrats. We don't have that right now. We have a lopsided, unfair political system. I acknowledge when people don't think it's fair, but you have a role. If you believe you have rights as a citizen, which I do, you also have obligations. It's not just to vote, and it's not just to serve on a duty. It's actually to take this broken political system and make it better.
That is Allie Velshi, MSNBC chief correspondent and host of Velshi. Allie, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
And we've also been joined by USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey, the most common guest on The Middle at this point. Phillip, thank you so much as always.
As always, Jeremy, thank you.
And Tolliver, what is on tap for next week?
Okay, well, unless there's a huge news story right before the show, we're going to ask you about how the war in Israel and Gaza might affect your vote. You can call us at 8444-MIDDLE, that's 844-464-3353, or write in at listentothemiddle.com or on social media.
And while you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Joanne Jennings, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and John Barth. Our intern is Annika Deschler. Our technical director is Jason Croft. And our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks to Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 410 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'll talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping in another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.